The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Good afternoon. This is Mannin Line on Manx Radio, Manx Radio's public access programme. Your chance to have your say, your opinion on the air. On the open line today, call 66 13 68. You can also text on 166 177, WhatsApp on the same number, or email studio@manxradio.com. But between now and 1, the floor's yours. And first with us, David. Hello, David.
Hi, Andy. Just after the Chief Minister's talk on Sunday, in Sunday Opinion there, it was fine. To my opinion, anyway, it was fine, and it was telling us bits and pieces. But what have we achieved is the main point that I'm looking at today is, and when Beastie was on the other day, and I don't know the lady, but she was quite right. She filled a questionnaire form in, some sort of questionnaire regarding something to do with the Isle of Man. But you remember, Andy, the one that Jeff Robinson did for vehicles in the Isle of Man?
Yeah, I do.
And we had Mo Blessing did one as well, and it was done by an English company. The envelopes were all stamped that were going back to the UK. That was a good 6-7 months ago. I just wonder the one Beastie had. She never. I heard her listening that there was all sorts of questions on it, but she didn't say whether the return envelope was actually to the UK. And if they're not listening to us, why do they bother asking us the questions? That's my beef for today.
I think a lot of people have got that same feeling in that, it goes back to any sort of consultation. And some people get the feeling that the government's made its mind up anyway, and this is just window dressing. Now, I may be doing them a dreadful disservice, but some people have said that in the past on air, that sometimes they don't think there's any point in doing this, so they don't bother.
Well, my biggest thing is, and we've got a prime example on them, and it's going to come up at the seminar next week for the Council of Ministers, or this week, sorry. I think my slot is Tuesday, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of the ministers to ask them the questions. A, did the Council of Ministers vote for the 20 mile an hour to come in, and what was the presentation that was given to the Council of Ministers? And did any of the Council of Ministers saying, you're wasting your time, or you shouldn't be doing this, or did they win a majority vote and she crashed on about it? Or did she leave the Council Minister behind and did do nothing? That's the biggest issues I've got. You look at the portfolio the government's got, all the properties that's lying around, we'll go through them again. Summerland site, the bus station, although we think something's happening there now, the school, the Park Road School, there's the old prison site, and we've got, and I can say it because it was, as far as I'm concerned, was in the public domain. The minister's now talking about not having this, she's having housing agents or within her department acting as agents for the government properties, which is the local government, used to be the local government houses. The stock that's there is giving it to an agent and run by a politician. Now, isn't that becoming a landlord? And no wonder these private landlords are getting out of their portfolios, because it's hard work and government doesn't have to do anything. And my personal view is neither does the local authorities. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Oh, you forgot the Quarterbridge pub, by the way.
Oh, yeah. No, there's two pubs. The Quarterbridge pub and also the one down Derby Road there.
Oh, the Bowling Green.
The Bowling Green, that's right.
Okay.
We haven't bowled there for ages. All right?
Thanks for calling today. It's 11 minutes past 12. What did the Chief Minister have to say? The island can be proud of its success over the last 4 years, and it retains a strong position. 5 new pieces of legislation due to be promulgated at this year's Tynwald Day in a week's time. So what has the government achieved? Alfred Cannon, MHK.
I don't think you should necessarily judge the success of the government by numbers of pieces of paper that have been delivered, because we have had significant areas to tackle. Let's say getting on top of healthcare expenditure, healthcare governance, healthcare delivery does not predicate it itself necessarily just on pieces of legislation. Bringing forward the reform in terms of education, in terms of school inspections and how that was to be undertaken, doesn't necessarily need a piece of legislation to do that. It actually, the government can clearly demonstrate how it has made improvements, how we have improved the economy, how we have improved lives, how we have built more houses, how we have sought to get healthcare under control and move it forward without necessarily bringing forward legislation. There is legislation, of course, coming through in quite big streams. So actually there has been a lot of transitional work that we have undertaken. I think the island can be proud of the progress that it's made. We're certainly not in that 2016 position where we were net negative migration and people were leaving the island. The island retains, a strong position to continue to take us forward positively. And of course, we've got to build on some of those issues, for example, that were raised very much at our last public roadshows. That's why this year we have focused on the economy. We have focused on immigration. We're raising up the minimum levels of wages to prevent low-paid immigrants coming across into society. We're talking very much about security on our island. We've invested in our police force. We've strengthened their capabilities. The island's going to be a very safe place to live in a very uncertain world at the moment.
Mr. Cannon there talking yesterday on a perspective, I think it was yesterday. So, any thoughts on this? You may have heard that the Arbury Castle Town and Maloo MHK, Tim Glover, has a less positive viewpoint of how the government's been handling things. But anyway, what do you think of what the Chief Minister had to say? Howard's with us now. Hi, Howard.
Hello, Andy. Just away from all the politics and fighting and wrangling, something on a lighter note. I was talking the other day to somebody, and I don't know whether you remember what was the Regal Cinema in Victoria Street.
Yes, I do remember the Regal Cinema. Didn't that became the Celtic Bank? Is it now Plan.com?
That's right. Albert Goubet.
Yeah.
Albert Goubet had it demolished in 1983.
Yeah.
It was actually built 100 years before that. But what came to mind and in the conversation, I can remember my late uncle used to be the manager of that in the latter years, and there used to be an organ in the auditorium, and at certain times of the year or whatever, it would be played and it would rise up from the ground floor up to stage level. Now, it closed down in 1983. It was knocked down, rather. But it was run by the Palace and Derby Castle at the time, at the latter end of its life. Whatever happened to that organ? Was it demolished? Was it sold? Did it move on? Maybe there's some people of my age might be able to remember more about it. Right. But it was a huge, big organ built into the pits, and then it would rise up to stage level, as I say, and the organist would be playing there prior to the main film coming on.
Right, okay, so this was 1983, it was knocked down, you say? Yeah,
and became Celtic Bank, as you say.
Okay, so we're looking at, I'm sure somebody knows what happened to the organ. The organ at the Regal Cinema.
The Regal Cinema. The cinema itself, just for curiosity, was built in 1882.
Crikey.
Yeah. So she was 100 years old before they took it down.
Wow, and as you say, the Palace and Derby Castle had the Picture House, the Regal,
that's right, and the Strand.
And the Strand, of course, yes. And of course, the Regal, the Strand and the Picture House almost backed onto each other at the back, didn't they?
They did. Well, that's where the original Guthrie Gable was, up between those two cinemas. It's moved over about 20 yards now, opposite what's the paper shop across the way?
W.H. Smith.
That's the one. It's moved over to just there. And there's a nameplate put on that, Guthrie Gable, but it's actually it went up, and right at the top of that lane, I remember it well because we all lived down there at the time, was Jockin's, what do you call it, the blacksmith.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, I remember somebody telling me that the Picture House and the Strand Cinema, as I say, the projection rooms were you could almost run from one to the other, although the auditoriums were miles apart.
Yes, they were.
And apparently the Palace and Derby Castle would only pay for one set of newsreels. So the projectionist had to show the newsreel, wind it back, and leg it over to the other projectionist at the other cinema while they were doing that. They got the steps in by doing that. Anyway, that'd be nice to know. All right, Howard. Thanks.
Yeah, just a curio.
Good to hear from you.
A little bit of history.
Thanks, Dan. If anybody can spot the missing organ from the Regal Cinema, we're talking about 1983 time. I wonder if it's still around. You never know. Might be nice to know. On Friday, Michelle Haywood MHK was on, the DOI Minister, Department of Infrastructure Minister, talking about all sorts of things. And I have to say, she's going to be coming back on, I think, in about 6-7 weeks' time, talk about it more. Because I think she's quite eager to get the message out and talk to people. Here's Julian now. Hi, Julian.
Hi, Andy. How you doing?
Very well, thanks.
Good. I just have a follow-up to Friday's conversation I had with the DOI Minister, Michelle Haywood. The takeaway for me is it seemed a somewhat conflicted message. She said that the 20-mile-an-hour rollout will make very little difference. Her words, not mine. She also said the average speed in Douglas is 24.6 miles per hour. She also said that studies show 20 miles an hour only changes the average by around 3%. Well, 3% of 24.6 miles an hour would mean that the slowdown would be 0.7 miles an hour, which doesn't seem like good value for £400,000 worth of 20 mile an hour signage. She also said, and I quote, the difference between driving a mile at 30 miles an hour and driving a mile at 20 miles an hour is 4 minutes of time. Now, that's her calculation, not mine. But Andy, if she's saying that there's 4 minutes of time difference between driving at 30 and 20, Tesco's logistics are telling me that during their delivery shift of between 8 and 10 hours, each of their delivery vans drives between 80 and 100 miles. So if the DOI Minister is saying that there's an extra 4 minutes for every mile, and the shift is up to 100 miles, that's going to take a lot longer to get the shifts completed in a 20-mile-an-hour world, isn't it?
I just wonder whether the department has actually spoken to the companies that do all the miles, and I'm thinking particularly of, well, in particular, the couriers that do all the miles, and the big companies like Tesco, obviously, because they've got supermarkets everywhere, as have the Spar, as have the Co-op. So it will be interesting to know. Because these are the people that take goods literally all over the Isle of Man. It will be interesting to know what their take is.
Well, it didn't escape my attention that the actual question I asked was, had she approached any businesses or social care or district nurse visitors to home? Unfortunately, she didn't answer the question, which I don't know if that's a yes or a no in that case. But this also doesn't take into account the likely gridlock resulting for almost all the arterial roads being slowed by around 33%. And there's somewhere between 18 and 20 arterial roads running around Douglas and Onchan. And that problem, if you remember, Douglas and Onchan has a population of almost 36,000. And they're all disproportionately concentrated within these 20-mile-an-hour zones that Tesco and the Co-op delivery vans have got to navigate. So the person from Tesco Logistics also told me that the company has a zero-tolerance policy for speeding, with instant dismissal being their default position. So if Tesco's have got to absolutely stick to the limits, you've got to wonder, that's 4 minutes for every mile and 100 miles. Anyway, and then you've got to think
were you convinced by what Michelle Haywood had to say, Julian?
Well, I just find it confusing because on the one hand, she's saying it won't make much difference, in which case, what's the point? And if Tesco's and I are right, then it's going to be a hell of a difference, because you're going to have gridlock everywhere. And I mean, let's suppose you just suppose you take like Ballacrint Avenue or say Windermere Drive coming up. Say you're trying to get out of those two in Onken, going out towards the White Bridge or coming into town. If you've got massive gridlocks, that's going, and you've got slow traffic all bunching up, it's going to be a nightmare getting out of there. And let's suppose Tesco or Co-op are trying to deliver within those estates.
Well, it's fair to say it's fair to say that the traffic light arrangement in Main Road Onken slows everything down anyway, because you've got the lights at the top of Royal Avenue and the other lights outside the Co-op. So that, and then there's the roundabout just along the way. So it's not like you can get a lick of speed up through Onken anyway.
Well, yeah, so everything's just going to bunch up. And, I think the calculation was 14,500 less Tesco delivery slots a year, 6,250 less home visits from district nurses. I also noticed when Michelle Hayward has spoken in public and at the sea terminal, she spoke about another traffic calming measure for the future, the intention to increase parking on main roads. The DOI minister's theory being that it will make it harder for people to drive at speed because they won't be able to find anywhere to pull in when there's oncoming traffic. Well, some thoughts on that. If you increase parked cars, you're going to have sudden lane shifts or swerving and heavy braking, I would have thought, to avoid head-on collisions. You're forcing not only cars and motorcycles, but presumably bicycles and e-bikes into the oncoming traffic.
When did she say this? When did she suggest this?
This was in the drop-in session at the sea terminal. More parked cars are going to limit sight distance. So, if you have a clear road, you can see things like pedestrians, cyclists, children, dogs, cats, whatever, behind cars or even traffic lights. Emergency services, aren't they going to be impeded if they need to get going? And also, if I remember rightly, the visual splay distance for drivers trying to get out of their own driveways, doesn't planning regulations say at least a 36-metre splay? If you're encouraging cars to park either side of people's driveways on roads, and what about long vehicles like buses and tractors with trailers or Arctic lorries? I mean, are they going to be able to pull into these gaps if you're going to sort of, encourage parking on roads in the name of trying to slow cars down? You're just going to end up with traffic congestion.
Well, it'll be interesting to. I mean, what I took overall from what Michelle Hayward had to say on Friday was, and I don't want to paraphrase her out of context, but she sort of intimated that it's a fuss about nothing and everything's going to be okay.
But like I said, you can't beat physics, because somebody at the front will drop down below 20 to make sure they don't break the limit, and people are not doing that now. She even said it herself. 24.6 was the average in Douglas with a 30 speed limit. So you are going to slow everything down, and the average I've seen from various studies, England and elsewhere, is about 17. So you're dropping a lot. So you're going to get all this bunching. You just see a tractor on any road. And if you talk about parking on the road, just try driving past Arbury School between, say, sometime around 8:30 in the morning or 3:30 in the afternoon. It's chaos.
She also didn't seem to intimate that there was going to be any sanction for transgressing this, and who's going to nick the people if the police aren't going to nick people. Or perhaps they will, perhaps they'll just do it in fits and starts. What's going to convince people who ordinarily would break the 30-mile-an-hour limit to conform to a 20-mile-an-hour limit?
Well, they won't. They'll always do that. That's why it doesn't work. But what you will probably have is what Wales did. They got the 20s in, and then they just did a big push and just did loads of... I mean, it was a 54% increase in fines. So all of a sudden, everyone's sort of traumatised by the fact that they've had a fine for doing 25 miles an hour on a road that they've always done less than 30 on anyway. And then what will happen is people will default to it. There were lots of people... It'll just be a self-policing thing. But for what gain? And, the DOI minister made out that it wouldn't make much difference. So you've got this kind of paradox. She's actually saying it won't make much difference, so what's the point in doing it anyway? But if Tesco's are right, and it's going to knock at least 40 delivery slots a day off, and possibly more, you just don't know, and then you've got all the knock-ons of district nurses and social care workers not able to get from, because you can't be in two places at once. It would be like trying to walk the parish walk at 3 miles an hour and then somebody else doing it at 2 miles an hour. You know what the outcome's going to be. You can't get away from it.
Okay, all right, Julian, we appreciate that. Thanks for calling today.
Thanks, Andy. Cheers.
A note in from Abigail, who tells me, and I didn't know this, that the Regal Theatre was the Regal Cinema was originally the Grand Theatre. And also, it was apparently remodeled by Frank Matcham. I didn't know that. Of course, we're very proud of the Gaiety Theatre being one of Frank Matcham's best examples, still around today. But the old Regal Cinema was the Grand Theatre, which was partially designed by Frank Matcham. It became this is Abigail telling me, and also apparently, yes, it did have a Compton rank cinema organ installed in 1935. George Tootle apparently was the person who did it. So if anybody knows what happened to that, we got a note in from Tom, who tells me the organ apparently is in Southport or Preston. It's a big area. If anybody knows where the Regal Cinema organ is, thank you, Tom. It's on display in a museum. Which museum? Where is it? It will be lovely to know where the Regal Cinema organ is. According to the minister, said Andrea, it's the will of Tynwald wanting 20 miles per hour, and she can't go against Tynwald. Well, it does date back quite a while to Mr. Shimmins. And obviously there was the proposal from Ann Call at MHK, the 20 is plenty. So it seems it's on the way. I just wonder what your thoughts are. Well said, Alf Cannon, says number 762. It's the first speech he's made without blaming COVID. Andrea also said, I was listening to the Chief Minister. If the island is such a good place, back it up with data and evidence that things have improved. I can only feel confident that there are about 5 decent MHKs, and only one of them is in Comyn. Andrea, which one, I wonder? There's little point in taking part in public consultations, says Postman Pete, as the government has usually already made the decision to go ahead. The only benefit to the government from these consultations is gauging the amount of criticism they're likely to get from implementing yet another expensive or unwanted scheme, says Postman Pete. Well, you could always say that to them when you go and see them. Chief Minister says there's been progress. Really, we're being stealth taxed to the point where we're no better off than the rest of Britain. Our infrastructure is crumbling and we pay more for everything, which is imported to the Isle of Man, although we own our own ferry service. I think the Chief Minister's in a dream world, says Paul on 715. If you receive stupid questionnaires or forms, they've probably been created by AI, says Victoria. This is the point about the More Blessing questionnaire that Beastie was talking about. More Blessing Perdue is I think she's Deputy Director of, or the Interim Director of Highway Services in the DOI, as well as Head of Highways and Asset Management. And she was, if you want to look at her, she's on, her LinkedIn profile is public. She qualified in Zimbabwe and in Birmingham. More Blessing Peduru is her name, and she is the person apparently sending out these the particular questionnaire that Beastie was talking about. Well, talking about the fact she didn't like it and the way that it was worded, because it seemed a bit UK-centric. Is the missing organ the one at the top of the arcade by the Gaiety Theatre where they have organ recitals? No, that's the Wurlitzer, isn't it? Is that the Wurlitzer from Summerland, I think? The difference between a mile at 30 miles per hour and a mile at 20 miles per hour is 1 minute, says 333. I was told that the organ played at the Regal was Dr. Tootle. Yes, apparently that was his name. Was it George Tootle? Andrew's on now. Hi, Andrew.
Hi there, Andy. I'm just searching for something. I know. Anyway, whilst I'm looking for this, you were just saying there about Will of Tynwald.
Yeah.
It's the Will of Tynwald. Well, look, there isn't, is there, any sanction for a minister and the department not following the Will of Tynwald?
Well, it wouldn't seem so, because they did that over the horse trams.
Exactly, 100%. It's always said to be the will of Tynwald that the horse tram lines go the entire length. Okay, so the department has what did they do? They reassigned the money. Can't remember what the actual word used was. It was they descoped. Was it descoped?
Yeah,
is that the term they used? But they didn't do it. There's never been any sanction because, of course, the minister's moved on, but there's nothing. So to actually, it might be the will of Tynwald for this 20 miles per hour, but it doesn't have to be done because there's no sanction, and so what? So I was just going to follow on, please, from Julian. I can't find... Julian there talking about Tesco, etc.
Yeah.
But I also had some information about buses, and apparently there's been no conversation with the bus company by the. Oh, here we go. Let me just have a look at this. The bus company, they do not know the impact and cost as they don't know how many roads will actually change after the consultation. It will impact frequency, thus making them less efficient, or if you want to maintain frequency, more resources will be needed. So there we are.
Well, it would seem another consultation.
Well, I mean, what's the cost going to be of somebody trying to work out the new bus timetables so they all interconnect with each other, and then the cost of changing it, and the drivers' work patterns, and the number of hours that are only allowed to work? I mean, it's just done without by the minister, without any. I mean, the bus, they're in the same department. And so this information that's come to me is from a Comin member. Yeah, I'm pretty sure a Comin member. So it's just showing that, it just highlights that the minister doesn't have a grip on what's needed to do this job.
Well, as you say, you would have thought that if this had been something that was going to come in within the DOI, that, as you say, one part of the DOI is transport, the buses, that they would have picked that up in the office and said, we need to take a look at this.
And before they started to order all the signs, etc. So it just shows incompetence, in my mind, from the minister, not being able to pull all this together before starting ordering signs and putting posts up. Okay. And then even having to backtrack and have conversations. So thanks so much. Cheers. Have a good day.
Good to hear from you. Thanks for that. A message from the answer phone. I lost this message for a while. I do apologise, but I'm going to air it now.
Hello, Andy. Can you ask David, will there ever be a scheme in place to purchase your council house? I believe something like 40 years ago, there was one put out and they got little interest. But I would very much like to know if that would ever be possible again. Thank you. My name is Ailish. Bye.
We've had this, thank you, Ailish. We've had this mentioned quite a few times. That was for when David Ashford was in talking about housing. And, of course, there were schemes in the UK where council tenants, public sector tenants, could purchase the house, particularly if they'd had a tenancy for a long time. That's always been knocked back on the Isle of Man. I just wonder whether you think that's a good idea and something that should be thought about. I mean, if the government's open to consultations, what do you think? That was Ailish. Do you agree?
Hi, Liz. I see you've had your garage converted. We're desperate for more room.
Yes. Come through and have a look. John called Manx Property Conversions. We now have an extra bedroom, but it could be another reception room, kids' playroom or office. They also did our conservatory roof last year. We were so impressed, we got them back to convert the garage.
Wow, I need that. What's their number again?
Call MPC on 450 500. That's 450 500. Or find them on Facebook at Manx Property Conversions.
The copper network is being switched off, affecting Wi-Fi and home phones if you're not already on fibre. But don't worry, Manx Telecom are here to explain everything clearly, provide everything you need to get online, set up your new connection and be there for support. The future-ready team at Manx Telecom will help you make the switch to fibre with local engineers and support staff on hand to guide you every step of the way. Move the Manx way and call 626626 or visit us in-store today.
Throughout the summer and into autumn, check out a fabulous array of on-board dining events. From the legendary pie and mash train, wine tastings and murder mysteries, to sunset dining, steam legends and family-friendly afternoon teas, there's certainly something for everyone. See what's cooking on the dining car and book now. Call 697 457 or visit rail.im.
Chris Thomas has been a regular thorn in government's side since the Chief Minister asked him to vacate his office as Minister. In recent months, he's been championing the cause of local government, hinting at reform, but calling for greater participation of commissioners and councillors in the reform process. He's interjected in the 20-mile-an-hour resident zones debate and has an interesting take on the current leadership in the Isle of Man government. He joins me on Agenda this evening at 5:30pm on Manx Radio. Expect an interesting, wide-ranging discussion, and if you listen very carefully, you might just spot the bombshells.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
And Les is on now. Hi, Les.
Hello there. I used to work for the Palace in Derby Castle years ago. And at first, the first jobs I ever did, I used to be a runner from the Royalty to the Regal to the Picture House and then onto the Strand with the newsreel, which you were talking about. But then, not only that, but I am a professional pianist and organist, and there were three of us that used to play the organ at the Regal Cinema. It was a Compton, and I used to play it, and it was Dr. Tootle. He was the main one, and if he was off sick or anything like that, either myself or Mr. Lenny Uren, who used to work at James Lay's, would be called in to play the organ for the Sunday night sing-song. Now, we had a list, and we had all the songs like Little Word called My Blue Heaven and all those songs, and everybody would sing, and we put the organ up for them to sing, and the words came up on the screen in front of the organ, and then all the people could read it, and then just before the thing, I got word then, and Lenny would get word to drop the Compton organ down, and then the cinema would start, but it was held on a Sunday night at the Regal, and we were the three organists. That was Dr. Tootle. He was always referred to Doctor. I don't know why, but anyway, but it was Dr. Tootle. Lenny Ewan, he worked in Lay's, and myself. And then, anyway, that was having that. But since then, I've been an organist at various places throughout the island for, right up to, not to present day, because I'm in my 90s now, But anyway, that'll just fill you in on a good lot of the things, but it was for only Sunday night only.
Right, so tell me, Les, were there any organs in the Royalty or the Strand or the Picture House?
No, the Picture House. The Picture House was the other one,
right?
Because when that Picture House finished, they were dismantling the organ, and one of the local bands, they wanted a drummer. But anyway, the cymbal system in the organ was given to one of the local entertainers.
Oh, fantastic.
I'm just trying to think of his name, but anyway, there were so many hours. But anyway, he got the cymbals and everything out of the cinema at the Picture House.
Right.
The Strand didn't have one, but the Picture House did. So it was just the Picture House and the Regal. And the main one was the Regal.
Les,
Sunday.
How many people used to be at the cinema on a Sunday night at the Regal?
Oh, packed, absolutely packed. Absolutely packed. Honestly, it was marvellous, And it used to change colour, as it went up, the colouring of the organ and the lights and everything. And it was really marvellous them days. There was plenty of activity and plenty of things for the people to do.
Fantastic.
Because we had the Parody Dance, we had the Royalty Cinema for the matinees on a Saturday afternoon, in the Threateneys and watching Flash Gordon and his men going to the moon. and all sorts. But anyway, there's nothing like that. And then even lots of things. I was when I was younger, they used to have the big hall in Strand Street called Fellman's Hall for the sing-songs and everything. Nothing like that now. The place, honestly, there's no entertainment for the people now. I don't know why, but anyway, I just thought I'd let you know and clear up a few things.
Appreciate that, and thanks for, you educated us, Les, and we appreciated it.
Right, bye-bye then.
Good to hear from you. Thanks for that. Yes, Feldman's Hall. I think that's now HSBC Bank, and certainly the Picture House is at Superdrug now. And the Palais de Danse, of course, is Waterstones. That's why it's so big. Used to have a balcony around the old Palais de Danse. Well, thank you for that. Good to hear from you. Wow. The Regal packed on a Sunday night. Right, let's get to Jill now. Hi, Jill.
Hiya, Andy. I was wondering, have you watched The Gold on BBC iPlayer about the gold that was stolen in the 1980s?
Somebody phoned about this last week and said the Isle of Man was getting a bad rub from it all.
Yeah, it's really, really bad. It's my husband and I. It's cringeworthy when we watch it. So it's well worth that your listeners and yourself to watch it. I mean, they say the airport looks like the Soviet Union. This is Douglas Baxter. He's the graduate lawyer who laundered the money on the Isle of Man. And I'd like the Manx people to see if it was actually made on the Isle of Man, because me and my husband don't recognise really anywhere when they show the Isle of Man. But it's so bad. He even has a run-in with the poor stewardess when he gets to the airport. It's so much. It's cringeworthy. You've got to listen. You've got to watch it.
My word,
Andy.
Well,
it's really so cringeworthy.
I'll be honest. I don't think it was made on the Isle of Man. I don't think they'd have got away if they'd made it here.
So. But the writer didn't like us very much here, and it's really horrible, really, to keep. They go on and on and on. I mean, scampi poisoning in one of our restaurants. It's just not needed.
All right, okay.
And it was up for a BAFTA as well. Okay, so have a look at it, Andy,
Good to hear from you.
Your listeners.
All right,
all righty.
Thanks,
Bye.
Jill. Thanks for that. We're talking about The Gold. Have you seen it? This is one with Hugh Bonneville in, about the Brinksmat robbery and the. How shall we put it? The legitimising of the proceeds that years and years ago, and this was decades and decades ago, that may have involved the Isle of Man. John's with us now. Hello, John.
Hi, Andy. This is not what I came in for, actually, but the organ I remember in Douglas was the one, I can't remember what it was called, the cinema house, but it was in Victoria Street.
Oh, that's the Regal.
The Regal.
Yeah.
That definitely had an organ. I do remember that. Anyway, that's not what I came on for. In Ramsey, you talk about the newsreels going from one cinema to the other.
Yeah.
Now, in Ramsey, we had two cinema houses, the Plaza and the Cinema House. And what used to happen, they used to play the newsreel in the Plaza before the main feature, and then a little man called Lawrence, I can't remember his second name, used to, on a push bike with a carrier in the front, used to cycle over to the cinema house, and then that newsreel would be played at the end of the main feature. I can't remember. Now, Lawrence used to be in charge of the boiler house under the Plaza, too, to keep the heating going. And that was his job as well, as taking the newsreel over. Somebody in Ramsey may remember Lawrence, because he was a hell of a nice man. I got to know him quite well later on.
Okay, now for anybody who wouldn't know, what's where the Plaza used to be now?
By the tram station, which is now a car park.
Okay, right. Brilliant.
It was a big building.
Okay, and where was the
cinema house? Became Ray Motors showroom, which is still there, but it's empty.
Oh, I know. Yes, just by the just by, as you say, I can picture it now.
Across the road from the petrol station.
Of course it is. Yes. They're selling something there, but it's not Volkswagens.
Well, it's just empty. I don't know what's going on, because Ray Motors family run the garage, which is across the road. It's like I can't remember. That was part of Ray Motors too, actually.
Somebody's asking, was it Lawrence Gawn?
I'm not sure. I just can't remember. I just knew him as Lawrence.
Okay, all right. Well,
the second thing, on Friday, the minister, I asked a question about tarmacking different places.
Yes.
And why they were doing cul-de-sacs in Onken. And the stock answer was that things have to be prioritised. Now, how can you prioritise a cul-de-sac in Onken over the main roads, for instance, Woodburn Road into Douglas? It was a typical political stock answer. Now, the other rumour I've heard, that Woodburn Road, they're afraid to touch it because they don't know what they're going to find.
Well, the problem is remember years ago, that was a cable tramway.
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
The cable tramway used to come up Bucks Road, went to York Road, turned right, and finished halfway down there by where the toilets used to be.
By the terminus, yeah.
Yeah, so who knows? Yeah. There could be something left of the cable tramway underneath.
Well, there could be, but I don't know why they would be afraid. Obviously it would be a big job. It's not. I don't think it's not the case of just coming along and laying a layer of tarmac on it. Yeah. You're going to have to sort of redo the whole road. But how long are they going to leave it and keep doing these little jobs?
Well, it might be interesting to know, John, whether or not, and she said there are priorities. Now, are these financial priorities or priorities in terms of time? Because, there may be that Woodburn Road's going to cost, I don't know, X £100,000, and they don't have that, but they've got a few £1,000s to do little itty-bitty cul-de-sacs here and there. I don't know, and it would be nice to know.
Oh, the other thing is, does somebody of importance live in these cul-de-sacs? Because that has happened before on the island, not mentioning any places, but it happened just outside Ramsey.
Okay. All right. John, it's good to hear from you. Thanks for that.
Okay. Bye now.
All right. Text, email, if you can get to the bottom of Lawrence, the man on the bike who went between the cinemas with the newsreel, it'd be interesting to know, and anything else that's on your mind. Call, text, email and WhatsApp on Mannin Line.
Order! In this case for Manx Car Store, let's review the facts. Firstly, you handpick an excellent range of quality cars for all budgets, are a trusted car sourcing specialist, you knowingly open 7 days a week, and are subject to an excessive number of 5-star web reviews. How do you plead?
Guilty.
Very well. This court hereby declares Manx Car Store 5-star.
Don't take their word for it. Find out for yourself. Visit manxcarstore.com or find them on Facebook.
Spectrum Windows. If your house needs a new look and your windows letting rain, keep those cold breezes out and make it look like new again. Spectrum Windows, Spectrum Windows. Quality through and through. Great work guaranteed to you. Spectrum Windows, Spectrum Windows. Spectrum Windows.
Looking to make the most of your savings? Conister Bank offer a range of savings options, from fixed terms of 6 months to 3 years to variable rate notice accounts with notice periods of 95 to 180 days. And choose monthly or annual interest, whatever works for you. For the latest rates and an application form, check out conisterbank.co.im. Conister Bank, celebrating 90 years of community, heritage and connection. Here for the journey. All deposits are subject to status, terms and conditions apply. No early withdrawals permitted. Qualifying deposits made with Conister Bank are covered by the Isle of Man Depositors Compensation Scheme as set out in the Depositors Compensation Scheme Regulations 2010.
Hi, this is Chris Pearson. Join me and Christy DeHaven chatting with Sir Barry Gibb about the Bee Gees and growing up on the Isle of Man.
I think Robert wanted some kind of visual idea for Jive Talking, and so we did that. Maybe the Douglas Bay Hotel.
What would you like the Bee Gees' legacy to the Isle of Man to be?
That the two are connected completely. That's what I'd like to see, and I'd like everyone to know that that's where it began for us.
Brought to you by Manx National Heritage.
Hi, this is Barry Gibb. Join me on Manx Radio with Christy DeHaven and Chris Pearson.
Tynwald Holiday Monday from 6 and available afterwards as a podcast at manxradio.com.
When the summer day is over,
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
And Juan as well. Hi, Juan.
Hey, Andy. Yeah, talking about nostalgia, my grandfather worked the old Grand Theatre in Victoria Street, and then moved on to the Picture House. Had some crazy memories back there in the Picture House in its heyday as well. There's an interesting caricature one gone on YouTube recently about the Palace Coliseum. Have you seen that? There's a guy done He done a video a couple of years ago about Victorian Douglas, and he's just done one about the palace.
That was huge. The Palace Coliseum, I think. The last 1965 or 66 was the last summer season there, and the headliner was Val Doonican. And apparently, it needed 2,000 people to fill it. It was enormous.
Amazing. Just going on to politics. We had two big shows this week, Andy, haven't we?
What are those?
Katie Hopkins. Their government show's on as well, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. Forgot. No, joking. I'll be at that tonight. One show they're laughing with you, and the other show they're laughing at you. I'll leave the listeners to work that one out. Talking about what Julian was saying there before, I can go along with exactly what he said, what the minister said about making more roadside parking to make it harder and naturally slowing traffic down. I was there, so I did hear that. So I can concur with what she said with that. And again, the question we've got to ask again: why are we spending so much time on this? Why is it being brought in? It's not safety is the primary thing. We spoke about this before. We've got a stubborn minister who won't move on it. We've got a chief minister who seems to be surrounded by not the best combing and not making the proper decisions. But we have so much other stuff going on at the moment which is getting sidelined. You know, the Rosalind Ransom thing is still kicking around. The King Gaming is still kicking around. Possible court action and recompense for the Lord Street site, the Access Zone bill, and now we've got the new one with Stay Isle of Man. There's so much stuff which is going to cost us potentially millions, and it's all getting sidetracked for this 20-mile-an-hour thing, which has taken our attention off the big picture here. I do hope that people go along in the next 3 nights and question the government, and I do hope that they do take questions from the floor rather than just the Slido and protect themselves from the people with open questioning, because we have got a little bit of a boat with a hole in at the moment, and we need someone with a repair kit to fix this pretty damn quickly. The 20-mile-an-hour thing is just a small piece of what's going on. I just hope that they see sense and put this back in its box in some way or form, and listen to the consultation. And again, the minister seems like she's only got one set of eyes and one set of ears with this, and it's only the people that protest that come to these meetings. The majority of people like it. I don't think that's quite true. Put it to the vote.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Juan.
Take care, Andy.
Good to hear from you.
When the Mannin Line's not on air, call Manx Radio to leave your opinion for broadcast on 682 631.
Well, it is the first of 4 meetings tonight. The government's going to be listening to you. That's their phrase, listening to you. The road shows across the Isle of Man from 5:15. Well, they start at 5:30, but doors open at 5:15. Events of 5:30 till 8 o'clock. Now, all the venues are accessible with on-site car parking. Tonight, it's Ramsey Grammar School. Tomorrow, Tuesday 1st, will be Ballacomine High School in Douglas. Wednesday, it's going to be Castle Rushen High School in Castletown. And Thursday, QE2 in Peel. If you want to nip along and see Comyn and chat to the government and make sure that they are listening to you, could be taxation, could be travel, could be mental health, could be immigration. Lee dropped a note just to say, Andy, when the Chief Minister's talking about the financial future of the Isle of Man, and we seem to be wrapped up in the assisted dying bill, the vote for the bishop in Tynwald and 20 miles per hour. Are they trying to distract us? I'm sure they're not, but you can talk to them, and not many places in the world where you can talk to ministers like this and politicians like this, people whose decisions affect your everyday life. Regarding the speed limits, text 917, it's for frustration to drivers that needs to be considered. Nobody minds slowing down when there's a good reason, but this is not what is being proposed, says 917. Don't you love this crazy government and the way the Isle of Man works? And another thing, why go to the trouble of building a new holiday when there's one half-built eyesore behind it? Well, that is interesting. This it's the new travel lodge, I think you're referring to, the Tavia development, which is absolutely cracking on. I think it's going to be finished before TT 2027. But behind it, there's that iron skeleton on Duke Street. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm no building expert, but if that Tavia building gets built, are they going to have room to get building vehicles down the lane and do it, or you're going to have to close Duke Street to do it? But nothing seems to be happening with that iron skeleton on Duke Street, unless it's going to be one of maybe it's going to be an art display. You never know, do you? Right, that's it. Back tomorrow. Another open line on Manx Radio. Thanks to Chris on the phones today. Enjoy the rest of your Monday.
WINT